Okay, this is, I think, October 4th, and the Board of Adjustment meeting will begin with everyone here. I appreciate everyone coming here in this wonderful weather that we have now, so thank you very much. First thing what we'll do is do a roll call. So if you don't mind, we'll start from the left. Yvonne?
Right back. Earl Hartzog.
Right here.
Earl Hartzog.
Ferrando Hayward.
And Richard Jevitt. And just to let you know that Yvonne is an alternate at this time. She is being put on board. She will be able to ask questions, and she will also be voting on the particular product, just so we all know. All right. Let's see. As of this time, we have an opening for a hearing of residents. And if there's anyone here that would like to speak, you're welcome to do so. We do have like I believe it is a 3-minute time schedule on that. So when you come up to speak, just your name and address so that everybody will be able to get that. Do we have anyone? Nope. Okay, how's that? How's the mayor do it? Going once, going twice, gone. All right. So the next thing is the consent agenda, and this consent agenda is on the minutes for the June 5th, 2023 Board of Adjustment meeting. And I open this up to the board right now. Any comments? Okay, if I hear none, would somebody make a motion? Have a motion from Yvonne?
Second.
Second from Ferrando. Any other comments of any kind? All right, do I hear a vote? Starting from left to right.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye, vote passes. Minutes are accepted. Okay. Next item is the item for the, that is on the agenda right now. It is for, let me just make sure I get this right. It's PLVAR 20230-216, it's A. And this will be a public hearing. What we will do first is here the staff will present the information on that. Once that's done, we'll open up for a public hearing on this particular issue. All right, thank you very much. Please.
Good evening, Board of Adjustment members. This is for PLVAR 2023-0216, a variance for 5197 Pender Way for a front yard building setback reduction. Emily Delgado, Planning Manager. So here is the subject property outlined in green. So to kind of get your bearings, this portion of the property here is actually Parklands in northern Schertz up off of Eckert Road. So Parklands, and then there is another piece that is under development called Parklands 2, which is this area here. You can see the lot lines there. And then 5197 Pender Way is specifically this green lot here. On September 15th, 4 public hearing notices were sent to the property owners within 200 feet. On September 18th, the public hearing notice for tonight's public hearing was published in the San Antonio Express News. And as of today, we have not received any responses for the responses. Yeah. So the variance requested, the property owner of 5197 Pender Way has requested this variance specifically to ordinance number 19S20, which established the Planned Development District PDD zoning for the Parklands 2 development. So this variance is a little unique in the fact that typically when we bring variances forward, it's to a Unified Development Code section, and this is actually a variance to the Parklands PDD, which was ordinance 19S20. The variance is specifically in relation to the Dimensional and Development Standards section of 2157 within that ordinance, which stipulates a front building setback of 30 feet for designated lots. It's in order to permit, the variance is in order to permit a decreased front yard building setback from 30 feet to allow a 25-foot front yard. So in other words, if the variance is approved, there would be a decrease of 5 foot specifically for the front yard for 5197 Pender Way. So kind of going more into the Parklands 2 PDD, so the subject property, like I mentioned, 5197, is part of the Parklands 2 PDD. It was zone changed and approved in 2019 by City Council. And in that PDD, specifically for lots 1 through 18 of Block 1, lots 1 through 4, Block 11, and lots 1 through 8, Block 2, are required to have a 30-foot front yard setback and an additional tree planted on each one of those lots due to the fact that they are located on fairly straight roadways. So Pender Way, if we go back to the exhibit, you can see it's a fairly straight roadway compared to most PDDs. So the 30-foot was an above and beyond design standard requirement. So some permit background. The building permit for this lot was submitted in March, and it was submitted with the construction plans indicating a 25-foot front yard setback. The construction plans indicated that the proposed residential porch and the front of the home would extend into that up to that 25, meaning that it extends into that 30-foot required front yard setback. The permit was reviewed and ultimately approved and issued in May, with the proposed residential structure being located at a 25-foot setback. So in other words, during the plan review process, during the building permit process, staff did not identify the error and issued that permit with that 25-foot setback. So here is a copy of the survey with the residential home shown on it, and you can see, the City of Schertz approval stamp. Zooming in there, you can see here's that 25-foot building setback line that was identified, so you can, visualize that the front of the home is within that 30 feet. So here is that home today, currently constructed. So kind of some construction updates. Per the applicant supporting documents, the forms for the home were set in June. The foundation was poured on June 19th. Framing was started on June 21st and completed on July 3rd. On July 5th, it was determined by Beazer Homes, who is the current property owner, that the home under construction, which is designated to be their model home, was built at a 25-foot building setback rather than the required 30, which is when the variance process and conversation was started. So just to reiterate again, during the full construction process, staff never identified that error until the applicant, Beazer Homes, did start the conversation with the planning staff about the error. So the requested variance does not violate the UDC. The Parklands 2 PDD has a base zoning of R1, which per the UDC has a 25-foot front building setback line. The increased 30 feet was an above and beyond design standard out of the PDD. Again, to increase the aesthetics for those residential homes. Out of the 214 lots that are planned within Parklands 2, only 30 of those lots are required to have the 30-foot front setback, and allowing 5197 Pender Way to remain as present as permit issued and constructed will not violate the intent of the UDC. The subject property does not have any special conditions. The subject property, the lot, it's very similar to all of the rest of the lots that are zoned PDD as part of Parklands 2. The hardship is the result of the applicant's own actions, so ultimately the applicant did submit a building permit with construction plans incorrectly identifying that front yard building setback. However, as I mentioned, the building permit plan review process and permit issuance and during the inspections of the foundation form, the City of Schertz did not identify the error or correct the plans to the required 30 feet. So although the applicant submitted the plans with incorrect front yard, ultimately, again, the City of Schertz issued and the applicant constructed the home based off of the issued permit from the city. If the requested variance is not approved, the applicant will need to, ultimately meet that 30-foot setback, whether that means removing 5 feet of that front of that home, that's what would be required to meet that 30 feet. Allowing this variance will not diminish the intent of the PDD, as the rest of the specified lots will be constructed at the required 30 feet. So I'll say the City of Schertz Building Inspections Division understands and acknowledges fully their oversight of the setback error, and in an effort to ensure that this does not occur again, the Planning Division has created additional documentation around the PDD that they can use as a checklist when reviewing those specific homes in Parklands 2 to help identify that, and of course there was additional training that was provided as well. Additionally, Beazer Homes has acknowledged the error on their side as well and has submitted has ensured that building plans for those specific lots moving forward will be identified and be constructed at the 30 feet. So based on the building plans being submitted in error, identifying a front yard, setback of 20 feet, 25 feet, the permit being reviewed, issued, the home being constructed, per the issued building permit, staff does recommend approval of the requested variance to allow that 5-foot decreased front yard setback. And Mr. Calvin is here as a representative of Beazer Homes if there's any questions for him as well.
Great, thank you. Okay, just to let you all know, again, this is a public hearing. At this point, we will allow anyone that wishes to speak on this particular agenda item. They are welcome to come up here and discuss that. So, public hearing is now open. If there's anyone that wants to talk about it, please, you're able to do that. All right, since I don't see anyone going once, twice, just like the mayor, and public hearing is over, and we ask that the staff come up here again, and now we'll open up for questions from the board. Okay, Mr. Hernando?
I just want to make sure this is like the Swiss cheese model, like unfortunately all the holes lined up and boom, we have an issue. My question now becomes, this is an easy one for me in my mind. I just want to make sure that eventually model homes get sold, that there won't be a problem from the city's perspective for whomever eventually buys the home.
Yeah, so the way that the variance works, it runs with the property. So if Beazer Homes sells it to, whomever, that variance, if approved, would still be applicable for the new owners. It will forever and always run with this property. I will also tell you, the city building permits uses a software called CityView, which is where this variance case is living currently. That's where we track the progress. It's also where the building permit is, and there are a ton of notes all over the property that the variance case was submitted, that it's being processed. So there's lots of paperwork, to support if 10 years down the road somebody asks a question, we'll have all of this. Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure, not for now, but a decade and a half from now, someone goes, ooh, that's all.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? Mr. McElroy?
It's a couple of things. I'm going to call this an oops. Is that fair to say?
I would agree with that. Our building plans examiner team, they pulled up the PDD. It said a base zoning of R1. The base R1 in the Unified Development Code is 25 feet, and they ran with 25 feet. I will say on the planning side, to try to ensure this doesn't happen again, right? We created those checklists, and it actually encouraged us to create checklists for all of the PDDs in the entire city to ensure that something like this doesn't happen. And it's easy for our building inspection staff, instead of having to read this full ordinance, knowing here's the highlights that you need to look at when you're applying it to a building permit.
My understanding is that not all the properties in this development are even subject to this. Why are these particular ones, the 30 or whatever they are?
Yeah, so let me see if I can, trying to find the best example here. Okay, so the lots that this applies to are these lots here in that row, and then these lots here. So those were identified that they're on this kind of straight, not a whole lot of curve in the roadway. They're on the straight roadway. To try to push the homes back, we added that additional 5 feet in the front yard to try to, when you're driving down this really straight roadway, it doesn't feel like the house is right there. So it's to try to add that additional aesthetics, push the house off of the roadway a little bit. That was the goal. Ultimately, those 30 lots were identified during the PDD process. Yeah. So out of the 216 lots in Parklands 2, it's only 30 that this unique setback applies to.
It's simply an aesthetic. Okay. I have a question for the applicant, if I might.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. Just state your name for the record.
My name's Calvin New. I'm the Director of Land at Beezer.
Okay. So the way this was presented to the board here is that the applicant submitted the permit, I guess, or the application for the permit, and this with the incorrect numbers, and then the city approved it with the incorrect, or I should say, measurement. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if the board denies this request, what's the plan B here for Beezer?
Ultimately, we would look at, can we take the front of the house off? But at this point, it looks like we may need to actually demolish the house and move it back and rebuild it.
Okay.
So it's a pretty significant,
Ultimately, staff and the building inspections team would work with the applicant, with Beezer, to try to come up with a solution to ensure that the home is behind that 30 feet. But ultimately, anything that's in that 25 to 30 foot, that 5-foot window, if the variance is denied, would need to be taken down.
Yeah, and I don't mean to come across and be interpreted the wrong way, but I feel that the board, we're sitting here now to try to correct a mistake. And it's just my opinion, but I put it on the city. I think ultimately the city has to, you could submit completely erroneous plans, right? And if the city's going to approve it or not, it's ultimately their job to do that. And you probably would have some cause of action against the city if we would probably deny this. If some kind of economic damage that you'd probably have if you had to destroy the house or tear it down. I don't have any further questions.
Just a question, I guess, that we're talking about here. In terms of the adjustments on that, does that affect anything that would be a requirement for the fire department, police, or anything like that to be able to maintain a good flow on that?
No, so the reducing the setbacks of the 25 feet would not have an impact on fire or anything like that. So if I go back to, sorry, Calvin, I'm not trying to cut you off here, but right, if you think about all of the rest of the homes will be built at, besides those 30 that I mentioned, will be built at 25 feet. So 25 feet front yard is adequate for emergency services perspective on the front.
Where's our lot on this?
Your lot is this one right here. That one.
I apologize. I do have one other question. So obviously this isn't a UDC matter. This is just something to this particular development. Whose idea was it for the additional 5-foot aesthetic setback?
So it was, so the way that the plan development districts work, right, the applicant submits a design standard document that they work with staff back and forth. So, right, if you're looking at Beezer, it was not Beezer, it was the developer of Parklands 2 that went through that process and got it approved by City Council. But ultimately, City Council approved the PDD design standards with 30 feet on those 30 lots.
Okay, so this is subject, does this apply to any other developers' lots or developments anywhere else in the city, or is this literally just for these lots?
So ordinance 19S20, I believe, only applies to these lots. It only applies to this specific property.
Okay. So that 30-foot setback doesn't apply anywhere else in the city currently?
So I don't want to say that because I don't know off the top of my head every other PDD that we have. There might be other 30-foot setbacks. If you look at commercial properties, it's not uncommon. A property off of 3009 or 1103 has a 50-foot building setback line.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yes, I have a question. What happened to that?
Oh, you want it back?
Are you sure you got the right lot?
I might be off one. Give me just a second. Lot 2, Block 1, which is that lot. Lot 2, Block 1.
Something's changed. I was up there the other day, and it doesn't look like a location.
So that is identified on the CAD, the County Appraisal District as well. That's Lot 1. This is Lot 2. That's the subject property.
Okay.
Anyone else?
This is just to close the loop, because, yeah, we're talking, this is just to close the loop for everyone. This is a PDD. For the UDC, what is the normal for this setback? Is it 25 feet?
25.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
This is the last thing I'll say, I think, before we take the vote. And I think I've already kind of made that clear in a sense, but it bothers me that we're sitting here having to fix an oops. And I know there are problems, but I don't think that's really the reason for our board. And we're here with that task tonight, but it's something I don't think that we should have to necessarily deal with. There should be other ways to handle this. But that's all I'm going to say before we take the vote.
Excuse me. One of the other things that, like we look at it from the board because it was brought in as a variance to what we normally had on the UDC, if that's what I'm looking at right now. And based on that is what we're seeing on this particular area of development. So if we make the decision in favor of the builder or the developer, does that then constitute a format that we take a look at the UDC code itself to make sure?
No, so the variance tonight is a variance to the Parklands 2 Plan Development District ordinance. So it's not trying to alter or go against anything in the Unified Development Code. It's strictly just this home should have been built at 30 feet. Staff made an error. We completely agree with you on that. I don't think any of us wish we were here tonight. We wish the error was caught much earlier, and staff is acknowledging that. But the goal, right, is just to decrease for this specific lot from 30 feet to 25 feet, okay, based off of the Parklands PDD ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. At this time, there's no more questions. I'd like to see if there's a motion for approval.
I'll move to approve the variance.
Okay, we hear from Mr. McElroy an approval. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. So we have an approval and a second. Any other questions? All right. We'll take the vote from left to right, please.
Aye.
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 Aye. The motion is approved, and it is accepted as the way it was stated. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate the staff and everybody that was concerned in getting all of this together. Okay. The next thing is announcements, and the announcements by members for community events that you may have attended. We'll start with Yvonne from the left. No? Right?
Well, tonight is the Clemens Light Up the Night, I think they call it, over here at Lenhoff Stadium. My son's in the band, so let everybody know about that. I think it starts in maybe 30 minutes. So, but that's all I got.
All right, thank you. Earl?
One thing I recommend, we're going to have 3 new members in here, and we probably should have the city attorney come back out and explain the responsibilities and same trainings we've had over the years. But I think that we need to have a repeat of it, especially when we're hit with 2 new people already, so. That's all I have.
Okay. Ferrando?
Nothing germane to our meeting tonight.
All right, the only thing that I would make a comment on is that National Night Out yesterday was really fantastic with the police departments out there at the various HOAs. It was really interesting to see how the community kind of accepted everything else and did meet them. So want to thank the PD and everyone that was sponsored that. That was really very good. Okay. Next thing is the announcement by city staff. Any comments? Nothing? All right. Okay.
We're ready.
Okay, now we have the major one, which is item number 7.
It's adjournment. I move we adjourn.
Okay, Mr. Herzog moves for adjournment. Do I for a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a second from Mr. McElroy. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Nay.
I'm joking.
All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you again for your service. All right, cool. Did good. Good deal. So we get to keep these, is that what you're saying?